Welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today we're tackling, well, a truly monumental figure, someone revered across Judaism, Christianity, and Islam.
We're talking about Moses.
Exactly. Prophet, liberator, lawgiver. I mean, his story really shaped so much of the Western world's spiritual and even legal foundations.
It's an incredible legacy. And the material we've got lets us, go a bit deeper than just the Sunday school version.
Right.
Our goal here is to really unpack the core ideas, the teachings Moses brought forward. Why does this journey from, a basket on a Nile to a mountaintop still resonate so powerfully?
And we have some great sources for this. They give us a pretty clear roadmap through his life, the key teachings, and why it all still feels relevant. It's like a crash course, really.
Mm-hmm. So let's jump in, starting with, his pretty dramatic beginnings.
Okay, yeah. Let's unpack that. The story starts in ancient Egypt, and it's crucial to grasp the context. We're talking harsh, systematic oppression of the Israelites.
Right. Constant fear, the threat of genocide looming. It's a grim picture.
Definitely. And into that environment, you get this almost unbelievable origin story. Moses, saved as a baby.
And then raised, ironically, right inside Pharaoh's palace.
It's key, isn't it? He's living like a prince, power, education, all of it. But the sources emphasize he still had this deep connection, maybe secret, to his Hebrew identity.
He's straddling two worlds, completely opposed worlds.
Yeah.
And that tension, that duality seems to be what really drives his change. The turning point wasn't just knowing about the suffering.
No.
It was seeing it firsthand. Witnessing his people struggle, that seems to be the catalyst. It shifts him from, a comfortable insider to a fugitive.
Right, forces him out into the wilderness.
And he goes from the absolute center of power to total isolation.
And it's there, in that isolation, that the big encounter happens, the burning bush.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't just a cool visual for the storyboards. It's the moment everything changes direction for him.
It really is. And the task he's given there is just immense. Go back to Egypt, face down Pharaoh, the most powerful man known, and demand freedom for an entire nation of slaves.
Not exactly a small ask.
Not at all. And what's interesting in the narrative is Moses. He hesitates. He doubts himself, questions if he's up to it.
That reluctance makes it feel more real somehow.
I think so too. It makes his eventual leadership even more striking. But once he accepts the call, the action starts. This is the Exodus beginning.
And when we talk Exodus, the mind jumps to the plagues, the Red Sea parting, the big spectacular stuff.
Sure.
But the material also highlights the sheer logistics of it.
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't just a spiritual quest. Imagine leading potentially millions old people, kids, animals, out of a structured society into nothing, into a harsh wilderness.
It's a staggering feat of leadership under impossible conditions.
Right. And that Red Sea moment, that's the ultimate symbol of escape, physical freedom from Egypt. Yeah. But it's just the start of a much longer, harder journey towards becoming a free people, defining themselves.
Okay, so that action-packed journey leads us straight into the second part. The ideas, the spiritual truths that really cemented his legacy.
Yeah, because Moses is remembered not just for leading people out, but for what he taught them on the way and afterwards.
Yeah.
These were foundational principles.
Principles that literally shaped civilizations.
And they were revolutionary ideas for the ancient world.
Yeah.
Completely groundbreaking.
So the first big one we need to unpack, this concept of radical monotheism, faith in one God.
Yes. And you really can't overstate how radical this was. Think about the ancient Near East pantheons everywhere. Gods for rivers, gods for cities, gods for the sun.
Right, a god for everything.
Exactly. And Moses introduces this idea of a single, universal God, invisible, eternal.
So what does that mean practically for people wandering in a desert? If God isn't tied to a place like a temple or a statue, isn't that harder, more abstract?
That's the revolutionary genius of it, perhaps. By teaching God is invisible, universal, Moses creates a faith that isn't tied to geography or physical objects. Well, it shifts the focus away from external rituals, idols, temples, towards internal commitment, moral action, ethical living.
That's a massive shift. Politically risky, too, right? Undermining all those state gods like pharaohs.
Hugely risky. It's essentially democratizing faith, taking it away from state control.
Wow. Okay. And tied closely to that is the next core teaching, freedom and liberation. We know the political escape from slavery, but you said the sources point deeper.
Much deeper. The Exodus becomes a symbol for spiritual liberation.
How so?
Well, think about it. generations born into slavery, they carry mental chains, right? Fear, dependency, maybe even identifying with their oppressors to survive.
The slave mentality.
Exactly. Moses was tackling that inner bondage. True freedom, the teaching suggests, isn't just breaking physical chains, it's shedding that mentality. It's finding the internal spiritual autonomy to make moral choices, free from fear.
And those moral choices get codified, famously, in the Ten Commandments received on Mount Sinai. You can't talk Moses without the commandments.
Absolutely central. They become this ethical bedrock for, well, huge parts of the world's legal and moral thinking.
Not just rules for the desert.
No, far beyond that. They lay out fundamental principles for a just society. Honesty, respect for life, justice, compassion. Basic stuff, but revolutionary as a unified code. They create a kind of social contract. Actions have consequences, replacing arbitrary power.
But it's not just a list of don'ts, is it? The relationship is presented as more mutual. Which brings us to the idea of covenant and responsibility.
Precisely. It's not just rules from God. It's an agreement with God, a sacred covenant.
Okay.
And that covenant comes with blessings, sure, but also with responsibilities. The sources really stress this, living justly, humbly, kindly. That wasn't just nice to have. It was how they maintained their side of the bargain, their bond with the divine.
So rights come with duties. Freedom requires responsibility, especially in how you treat others.
You got it. It's incredibly potent. And Moses himself had to embody this, which leads to the fifth teaching, leadership through service. That 40-year desert journey, it wasn't picnic.
Understatement of the millennium, probably.
Right. It was constant pressure. Crises over water, food, people doubting, rebelling. And the material suggests this is where Moses' real leadership qualities emerge.
What specifically? What shines through that maybe speaks to leadership today?
Well, patience, for one, dealing with constant complaining and, frankly, rebellion, courage, definitely. Standing firm when people wanted to just go back to Egypt, back to what was familiar, even if it was slavery. But mostly it seems to be about faith and humility. The big takeaway is that his leadership wasn't about personal glory. It was about serving the people's needs, serving a higher purpose, even when it was incredibly difficult and thankless.
That kind of dedication, serving others, that's a perfect bridge to our last part. Why does any of this ancient history matter now, to you listening?
Because these aren't just historical events. They embody timeless values. Moses' life, his teachings, they offer a kind of model that really transcends specific religions.
Right. So let's quickly summarize those modern takeaways from the sources. First, that drive to stand against injustice, that's universal.
Yes, the liberation impulse.
Yeah.
Then the power of believing in something bigger than just yourself, moving past pure self-interest towards some kind of ethical commitment.
Like the monotheistic ideal applied personally, and living by moral principles, the commandments foundation. Honesty, justice, respect, guiding your actual choices day to day.
And finally, that idea of leading with humility and sheer perseverance. Real change, personal or social, takes time, patience, and that service mindset Moses showed over those 40 years.
So when we boil down everything we've discussed, what's the final picture? What's his ultimate impact according to these analyses?
I think it tells us Moses wasn't just a historical figure. He laid down a kind of blueprint, a blueprint for how freedom, moral law, and accountability need to intersect for a just society.
Okay.
In a world that feels, pretty fractured a lot of the time. His teachings kind of call us back towards unity, justice, compassion, based on shared ethics. They provide a common language for right and wrong that still anchors us in many ways.
This has been fascinating, a real deep dive. Moses emerges as this teacher of radical freedom, a guide through moral law, and, I guess, a symbol of the faith needed for huge change.
Absolutely. And his story invites us, you listening right now, to think about our own lives. The material leaves us with some really potent questions to consider.
Like what?
Well, how do we handle big challenges, personal or collective? What principles really guide our actions when things get tough? And knowing that change needs both courage and humility, how can we stand up for what's right, for truth and justice in our own time?
Powerful questions to carry away. Definitely things to reflect on. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the life and teachings of Moses.